How do you select relevant evidence to support your claim? In this lesson, you will learn to support a claim by evaluating relevant evidence from the text. We're working through responding to this prompt, what kind of people were the Crafts? In the writing process, we've done a close reading of the text. We've looked at the prompt and analyzed it. And we're right now in the process of generating and planning our essay. We're going to continue to plan by evaluating the evidence and the text. So all the close reading we did will be valuable as we use the evidence from the text to prove our claims that the Crafts were brave. So let's take a look back at our argumentative essay map. We've already generated a claim that the Crafts were brave people. Next, we'll need to support our claim with evidence. We won't convince our reader that the Crafts were brave if we just throw out a bunch of random examples of what we think proves their bravery. The reader would likely not hear anything from all of our information but blah, blah, blah. We'll need to look at all the evidence and decide which examples would be most relevant to our argument. We'll also need to organize the evidence into an order that makes sense and won't confuse the reader. Our essay map will help keep all of our evidence organized. So here's the steps we'll follow to find our supporting evidence. First, we'll review the text and your notes from the reading. Next, we'll ask what evidence supports my claim. And last, we'll choose the most relevant evidence by asking what evidence most directly supports my claim. Step 1 is to review the notes from the reading and the text. I'm trying to think about which notes might help me the most. I'm looking for the most relevant evidence to support my claim. Well, one of the reasons I believe the Crafts are brave is the way that they dealt with the dangerous situations. So I'm going to go back to my notes from the reading lesson when we were looking at how the Crafts dealt with the heart in the mouth moments. These are 3 examples of the moments when I was convinced that the Crafts were brave. The first is when William saw his boss looking through the train windows and he didn't panic or run. He just turned his head away and shrunk in his seat. And then the next example is when Ellen knows her seatmate. Looking at my notes, I see that she thought he was there to take her back, but she didn't panic. She remained calm, and he didn't suspect a thing. That really took courage to sit there and try to look like nothing was wrong. Then my third example is when they were asked to leave the train right before the last stop. I think maybe my notes from the last reading lesson might list more evidence that I could use. Yeah, these are the notes I took when I wanted an overview of each paragraph of the text. And as I read through these notes, I notice that some of the statements are not really evidence, like began journey. And I see that some of these statements are evidence I've already looked at. But this third challenge, when a slave trader offered to buy William, and the fourth challenge, when Ellen was scolded by an officer, that might be something I could use. Step 2 is to ask what evidence supports my claim. Well, now that I think about it, the evidence in these notes doesn't really say that they reacted in a brave way. It really just says that these things happened, so I guess that really wouldn't support my claim. I'll ask that same question in my first set of notes. Well, yes, I think each of these examples support my claim. They each describe how the Crafts reacted in a brave way to a frightening situation. I remember something from reading that made me think right at the beginning that the Crafts were brave. That information doesn't seem to be in my notes, but I remember it was in the introduction. I'll zoom in on one sentence. Despite the luxury accommodations, the journey was fraught with narrow escapes and heart-in-the-mouth moments that could have led to their discovery and capture. Yes, this is the phrase right here, could have led to their discovery and capture. That really caught my attention. Step 3 is to choose the most relevant evidence by asking what evidence most directly supports my claim. Well, let's take a look at what relevant evidence I've gathered so far. William stayed calm when his boss was looking in the windows. Ellen knew her seatmate but remained in character, and both kept fear in control when asked to leave the train. What most directly supports my claim? Well, I think I really want to include the first 2 points. That evidence shows how both William and Ellen responded bravely. But what about this last one? I'm not sure about that one. In the other 2 situations, they could have been caught and returned if they hadn't kept calm, but in this last situation, they would have just been asked to leave the train. I don't think I'll use that one in my evidence of their bravery. I also looked at some evidence right from the text. Let's see how all this information fits together on our essay map. I'll zoom in so I can jot down the evidence I chose. Now for the reason, remember I was trying to decide what notes to review. I decided to use the notes from the reading lesson about how they dealt with the heart and the mouth moments because that was one reason I thought they were so brave, so I'll use that. But I also want to use this text evidence about that it could have led to their discovery and capture. So I think I'll change that about, I think the Crafts were brave because of the way they reacted to situations in which they could have been captured. So I'll put that right here on reason 2. And then when I want to include the evidence, I'll just list that right here in the evidence boxes. Now, I'll still have one empty evidence box, but that's okay. Sometimes I'll need more than 3 boxes for evidence, and sometimes I'll need less. So here's my essay map so far, but I'll need to repeat this process 2 more times to complete my essay map. You'll need to do that as well before the next step. Our next step will be to acknowledge an opposing claim. So where are we in the writing process? We're working on our essay map, so we're still in the generating and planning stage. But once the essay map's complete, we'll move on to start drafting our essay. Here are the steps we followed. First, we review the text and your notes from the reading. Next, ask what evidence supports my claim. And third, choose the most relevant evidence by asking what evidence most directly supports my claim. In this lesson, you have learned to support a claim by evaluating relevant evidence from the text.